The morning shift had just begun at the large distribution warehouse on the outskirts of town. Machinery hummed, forklifts beeped as they reversed, and workers shuffled through security with their ID badges. The concrete floors echoed with the sound of boots and chatter. Everyone knew their role, their routine. Clock in, keep your head down, finish your hours, go home. Among them was Dana, a black woman in her early 40s, dressed in standard warehouse gear, a reflective vest, work gloves tucked into her waistband, steel-toed boots laced tight. She moved with quiet focus, her posture straight, her eyes alert. She was neither new nor old, just there. Or so most of her coworkers thought. The morning crew, mostly younger white men and women, had already formed their circles. Conversations full of sarcasm and inside jokes bounced around the break area. Dana passed them on her way to her assigned station. "Hey, Dana," one of them sneered, loud enough for the others to hear. "You sure you're in the right place?" "I thought today was for skilled labor." Laughter rippled around the table. She didn't break stride. Another chimed in. "Maybe she's just here to hand out HR pamphlets or something. You know, diversity and all more snickering." Dana paused for a split second at her station. She adjusted her gloves, checked her equipment, and said nothing. But her silence wasn't weakness. It was calculation. As the shift carried on, she worked circles around the rest of them. Her pallet loads were cleaner, faster, and perfectly balanced. Her logs were accurate to the decimal point. She double-checked others' work without being asked. Supervisors took note, but the whispers from her peers continued. "She acts like she owns the place," someone muttered near the lockers. "She's probably trying to get promoted over us. Just wait. She'll pull some racism card soon." They didn't know her story. They didn't know that Dana had spent 15 years managing complex logistics for a global firm before taking this job. They didn't know that she had degrees hanging on the wall of a small apartment she could have moved out of years ago. And they certainly didn't know that she had been sent here by corporate, not as an employee, but as a planted evaluator. Not yet, but they would. By midweek, the tension in the warehouse had deepened. Dana remained composed, working with precision and purpose, while the jabs from her coworkers became sharper, but quieter now, muttered behind clipboards, or exchanged with smirks and side-eyes. The more she excelled, the more uncomfortable they seemed. During lunch break, the usual crowd huddled around the far corner table. Greasy pizza boxes were spread out, and laughter echoed again, this time with Dana in their crosshairs. "She's trying way too hard," said Greg, the unofficial ringleader of the floor. "No one's that perfect unless they're up to something." "Maybe she's sleeping with someone in management," one of the women said with a giggle. They all laughed, until a supervisor walked in and mentioned that corporate was planning a surprise inspection soon. The room fell into a murmur of nervous speculation. No one wanted to be the reason the warehouse failed an audit. Dana, seated alone with a simple salad and a book cracked open, said nothing, but her eyes flicked up for the briefest moment. She wasn't smiling, just waiting. Later that afternoon, a shipment came in that had to be logged and organized within the hour. Panic rippled through the floor. The system was glitching, paperwork was missing, and the loading bay manager was nowhere to be found. Workers scrambled, voices rising. It was exactly the kind of scenario that could ruin an inspection. Dana stepped in quietly, typing commands into the terminal at the main workstation. "What are you doing?" Greg snapped. "You don't have clearance to touch that system." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she finished the sequence. The screen flickered, then the glitch resolved itself. She printed fresh manifests and handed them out without a word. Another worker stared at her. "How the hell did you do that?" Dana finally looked up. "I've seen it before." In a facility much bigger than this one, Greg scoffed. "Yeah, right. What were you, someone's assistant?" Dana met his gaze, unbothered. "No, I was their boss." A long silence followed. The words lingered, not loud, but heavy. Then, she turned back to the terminal and resumed logging the shipment, leaving the rest of the room in stunned confusion. Something had cracked. Not wide open. Not yet. But the image of just another worker was beginning to fade, and what stood behind it was starting to look like someone who knew exactly what she was doing, and why she was there. The rest of the shift moved differently. Whispers replaced jokes, glances lasted a few seconds longer. The workers who had once mocked Dana now studied her, cautiously, suspiciously, as if they were finally realizing she might not be who they assumed. By Thursday morning, word had spread beyond the floor. Even the operations manager, Steve, an older man with a coffee-stained tie and a habit of dodging responsibility, had heard about the manifest incident. He approached Dana in the sorting corridor, clipboard in hand and fake curiosity plastered on his face. "Hey Dana, got a minute? Just wondering, how'd you manage to fix that system error yesterday? It said it wasn't even something frontline staff should have access to." Dana didn't stop moving. "I didn't access anything unauthorized. I just knew where to look." Steve forced a chuckle. "Well, we appreciate the help, but maybe next time, just flag it for someone. Officially qualified." Dana finally turned to him, her tone calm but cutting. "If I hadn't stepped in, the shipment would have sat untouched for 4 hours, and the client would have pulled the contract." Steve blinked, taken aback. "And," she continued, "that contract brings in 18% of this facility's monthly revenue." "How do you know that?" "I read the quarterly reports." "Do you?" He didn't answer. Dana walked past him. Upstairs in the small HR office, a quiet storm was brewing. A report had been filed, anonymous but specific, detailing inappropriate comments made toward Dana. It was one of several complaints filed in recent months regarding workplace hostility, especially toward new hires and people of color. The regional director had taken notice. That afternoon, an email came through. All staff are required to attend a facility-wide meeting, Friday at 9 a.m. sharp. Attendance is mandatory. Corporate will be present. The buzz in the air turned electric. People speculated. Layoffs, restructuring, a shutdown. Dana simply folded her vest, placed it in her locker, and left for the day without saying a word. She didn't need to speak. The warehouse was already talking for her, and by tomorrow they'd learn exactly who she really was. The morning of the meeting arrived heavy with anticipation. Workers stood in small clusters near the break room, nervously sipping coffee from paper cups, throwing around wild theories. Greg leaned against the vending machine, arms crossed, trying to play it cool. But even he couldn't hide the tension in his jaw. "Bet it's a shutdown," he muttered. "Or cuts. Maybe they're replacing us with automation." No one answered. At exactly 9 a.m., the warehouse intercom crackled. "All personnel, please proceed to the main assembly room. The meeting will begin shortly." The room filled quickly. Folding chairs lined the concrete floor, a projector screen flickered at the front, and a few unfamiliar faces in crisp suits stood off to the side. Corporate. Then she walked in. Dana. Not in her warehouse vest, not in boots or gloves. She wore a tailored blazer, crisp slacks, and a badge clipped to her lapel. Not the standard employee ID, but one marked Executive Access. The silence that fell was suffocating. Even the corporate reps seemed to straighten as she approached the front of the room. One of them handed her a tablet. She tapped it once and took the mic. "Good morning?" Her voice was steady, unshaken, and for the first time, fully heard. "My name is Dana Whitaker. For the past few weeks, I've been working among you under directive from corporate, evaluating not just productivity and process, but culture." People shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Greg paled. "In recent months," she continued, "this facility has experienced high turnover, multiple complaints of discrimination, and an alarming breakdown in leadership accountability. I was sent here to confirm whether those reports were accurate." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I'm here today not as your co-worker, but as your incoming regional operations director." Gasps. Actual gasps. She continued. "I want to be clear. I didn't come here to punish anyone, but I did come here to change things. That starts with truth." Dana turned to the projector and tapped her tablet. On the screen appeared anonymized quotes from staff complaints. Racist jokes, exclusion, harassment, retaliatory shifts. Some workers looked at their shoes. Others glanced at Greg, who now sat motionless, jaw clenched. I know what it's like to be overlooked, to be mocked, to be underestimated. That ends today. No one moved, no one dared to speak. Dana took a deep breath and closed the presentation. We're going to rebuild this place into something better, but it starts with accountability. And it starts now. She stepped back from the mic, and in that moment, surrounded by the very people who once humiliated her, she stood taller than anyone in the room. The fallout was immediate. After the meeting, no one rushed back to work. Instead, the warehouse halls filled with hushed voices and pale faces. Greg slipped out a side exit, avoiding eye contact. Others exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what would come next. Donna didn't gloat. She didn't throw around her title or make examples of anyone, not yet. She simply returned to her new office, a modest glass-walled room on the second floor that overlooked the entire operations floor. From that vantage point, she could see everything: who worked with focus, who slacked off, who whispered when they thought no one was watching. By noon, 3 mid-level supervisors had been called into HR. One resigned on the spot. 2 others were placed on probation pending further review. And while some workers tiptoed through the day, others began to approach Dana, quietly, respectfully, with relief in their eyes. A middle-aged woman named Carla from inventory stopped by her door. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. Most people like us, we stay quiet. We keep our heads down. Watching you, I don't know. It felt like maybe that doesn't have to be the way anymore. Dana smiled gently. It doesn't. But someone has to be first. By the end of the day, the mood had shifted from fear to something new: clarity. The good workers, the kind ones, the consistent ones, they felt seen for the first time in months, maybe years. Dana walked the floor before clock out, asking real questions, listening. She didn't bark orders. She didn't need to. Respect, true respect, was already forming around her, not because of her title, but because of how she carried it. And as the warehouse lights dimmed and the last forklifts were powered down, it was clear: this wasn't just a change in leadership. It was the beginning of a reckoning. The next morning, the warehouse didn't feel the same. It was still concrete and cold, still buzzing with machinery and movement. But something invisible had shifted. The energy was cleaner, lighter, focused. Dana arrived early, clipboard in hand, not as a figure looming above them, but as one walking among them, present, alert, deliberate. She checked in with departments personally. Her questions weren't about quotas or deadlines. They were about systems, bottlenecks, and most importantly, people. Oh, you've been on night shift 3 weeks straight. You good? She asked one exhausted worker in packing. You noticed? He said, surprised. I notice everything. Some workers, especially the ones who'd stayed quiet during the months of harassment, began stepping forward. They shared small truths: who'd been passed over for promotions, who always volunteered for weekend shifts but got ignored, who made the place run behind the scenes but never got credit. And Dana listened. Meanwhile, those who'd spent the past year mocking others now scrambled to rewrite their image. Greg returned, avoiding Dana's eyes, suddenly polite, overly eager to help. He even offered to assist with any diversity initiatives, his voice trying to sound genuine. Dana didn't snap. She didn't humiliate him the way he had done to her. She simply looked him in the eye and said, "Trust isn't something you can fake your way into, Greg. It's something you show up for. Daily, that was all." She moved on. Upstairs, Dana met with the corporate team. She outlined a full structural review of the facility: staff evaluations, leadership training, and a new mentorship program that gave overlooked workers a direct line to advancement. By mid-afternoon, the first wave of internal promotions was posted. Carla from inventory was now a shift lead. A young Latino forklift driver who never spoke in meetings was named Operations Apprentice. No one had expected it. Everyone felt it. Dana didn't need revenge. She wanted legacy. And that's exactly what she was building. Brick by quiet brick. Weeks passed, and the warehouse transformed. Not with flashy renovations or dramatic shakeups, but through something much rarer: culture. People started showing up on time, not out of fear, but out of pride. Supervisors began listening instead of barking. Break rooms weren't full of gossip and eye rolls anymore, but actual conversations. Dana's influence was everywhere: quiet, steady, undeniable. One afternoon, the corporate vice president made a surprise visit. Unlike past inspections filled with tension and frantic cleanup, this one was smooth. The facility ran like a living organism: efficient, balanced, alive. He met with Dana privately in her office and asked the question that had been building since she took over. How did you turn this place around so fast? Dana looked out over the warehouse floor, watching Carla train two new hires, watching the team operate like they belonged to something bigger than a paycheck. I didn't change everything, she said calmly. I just removed the parts that were keeping people small. The VP nodded, but even he didn't fully grasp the depth of what she'd done. This wasn't just leadership. This was justice, rebuilt from the inside out. Later that day, Dana called a staff meeting. No screens, no warnings, just her, standing in front of the people who had once dismissed her and now looked to her with genuine respect. I came here to observe, she said, but I stayed to build. She paused. And what we're building isn't just a better warehouse. It's a place where people know they matter, where silence isn't survival, where talent gets seen, not ignored. Applause followed. But it wasn't loud or forced. It was real, earned. Afterward, as people filed out, Greg lingered. He approached her, eyes lowered. I was wrong about you, he said. Dana didn't gloat. She simply nodded. Now go be right about someone else. And with that, she turned, walking back to the floor, not as someone who had finally proven her worth, but as someone who had never needed to. Because in a world that tried to shrink her, Dana made space for others, and in doing so, changed everything.